because they eat so many of them, those tongues are actually long enough that they can use them to lick their own eyes. Okapi were first discovered by Westerners in 1901, which is the same year that Walt Disney was born.
There.
It's in the light.
Both of them.
I'll look right up here.
They're trying to be tour guides.
Looks like we're going to have a couple types of antelope in front of the truck in front of us. We'll be seeing much more clearly here in just a moment. Looks like we have some greater kudu and some shiny red antelope called bongo. Like we have several greater kudu on this hill to our front right. The greater kudu are the second largest antelopes, standing around 55 inches at the shoulder. We can tell that those are females from their lack of horns. Males have very long spiral horns. There's also a saddle-billed stork way up there that's a little bit harder to see. Regarding that shiny red antelope called a bongo, they're known as the ghosts of the forest due to rarely being seen. Both male and female bongo have long curvy horns that sometimes overlap. Now, to our left across the river is a resting black rhinoceros, the smaller of the rhino species, usually weighing around 3,000 pounds. They're more solitary than the white rhinoceros, not living in herds, which is why we're only seeing one. Unfortunately, due to poaching, there are only around 10,000 black rhinoceros remaining. They are commonly poached for their horns, which many people believe contain some sort of special or medicinal property, but in reality are just made of keratin, which is the same thing that makes up fingernails and hair. And hopefully we'll see some white rhinoceros a bit closer up here soon. Out of the Little Eturi Forest and over into the Safi River. The Safi River is home to aquatic animals such as the Nile crocodile and Nile hippopotamus. Now, Nile hippopotamus are nocturnal, but we usually have some pretty decent luck getting to see some that are up and active even during the day. We do have a pod of pink-badged pelicans out on those islands and down the river. Pink-badged pelicans are the smallest of the pelican species. They're also the only pelicans that build nests in trees. They're named for very faint pink oil secreted on their backs during mating season that's then spread throughout their feathers through preening, which is basically just the bird word for grooming.
One over here too. There's a bunch of them.
It looks like we are going to have a couple hippos past this palm tree up on land to our left. It might be a little bit hard to see, and as well as a couple in the water. They do spend a vast majority of their time in the water, typically only coming on the land to feed. As they are herbivores, they come up the land to graze on grass. When in the water, they're capable of staying submerged for up to 8 minutes on a single breath. They're unable to swim due to not being buoyant at all, so instead walk or bounce along the surface beneath the water. They're actually considered to be the most dangerous animals of Africa due to being intensely territorial. We have a much better look at several Nile crocodile to our left. Nile crocodile are capable of eating up to half their body weight in one meal. They usually only eat about once a week, however they are known to be able to go several months in between meals when food is scarce. They may look as though they're sleeping, but they're most likely not. They are ambush predators. They're simply awaiting their next meal. Both male and female Nile crocodile will roll the rings around their mouths to help them hatch. Once Once they do hatch, females often carry their hatchlings in their mouths to protect them from predators, at least until they get too big. And actually, one of their most common predators are other crocodiles. We're now beginning to leave the Sabi River behind and starting to make our way out over onto the Savannah, which is the largest region of Harambe Wildlife Reserve. To our right, we're going to have a baobab tree. Baobab trees can live for over 1,000 years. They're sometimes known as upside-down trees due to being leafless for up to 9 months out of the year, which helps to conserve water and gives their branches a bit of a root-like appearance. Savannah's home to some of the most iconic African animals that we have here on the reserve, such as the Hartman's mountain zebra, the Maasai giraffe, and maybe even some African elephants, just to name a few. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled.
What's this now?
The baby girl.
Starting things off on the Savannah, you'll notice that none of these trees have many leaves remaining on them until about 20 feet up, which is most likely the work of some extremely tall animals. So that is a good sign that we can hopefully get to see some here before too long. Looks like there is at least one Maasai giraffe way out there across the Savannah to our front right. We should see much closer up here shortly. Maasai giraffe, as you most likely know, are the tallest animals in the world, standing between 16 and 20 feet tall. A big part of that extreme height of their massively long necks, which despite being so long, only contains 7 vertebrae, just like the neck of a human.
There's a painted dog back
To our
there.
left, laying down beneath that smaller tree, we have several sleeping African painted dogs. Painted dogs typically live in packs of 5 to 15, and they're thought to be the most successful hunters of Africa. People often confuse them with hyena, but hyena are actually more closely related to cats than dogs.
He got baited. He's like, oh, food's over there. What? There's this painted dog over there.
Never even in.
Now, to our left, back past these bushes are several sable antelope. Sable antelope are considered to be the most aggressive antelope species, and given a fight-or-flight situation, will typically choose to fight. For that reason, they're the icon of many African sports teams, as well as the icon of Harambe Wildlife Reserve.
He.
We do have a baby giraffe to our left. Maybe looks to be right around a month or 2 old. We can tell that these are Maasai giraffe from their spots. Their spots are more spread out and less well-defined than other giraffe species. Now, their key characteristic of giraffe are their ossicones, those bony prominences on top of their heads. Both males and females have ossicones, and while they resemble horns, they're technically not due to being covered with skin and fur. On both sides of the trail, we're passing by several termite mounds. These mounds are made up primarily of termite dung and saliva, and as they hardly become as strong as concrete. Animals out here on the reserve will frequently use these mounds as scratching posts. About to be to our left, we have a herd of springbok. Springbok are the smallest and fastest antelope here on the reserve. They engage in a behavior known as pronking, where they'll run around 50 miles an hour while jumping about 6 feet up and 13 feet forward. Also, another Maasai giraffe out there to our right. When giraffe babies are born, they fall around 6 feet, turn them up and walking within their first 30 minutes of life. And just like their cousins, the okapi, they have long, prehensile tongues they use to grip leaves. But their tongues are actually purple, which helps protect against sunburn when they have them out and about, tie up for so many hours of the day.
He's like, what's up?
Up ahead, we're also going to have a wildebeest, a herd of wildebeest as we come around this turn. You'll see just about more wildebeest out here on the reserve than any other animal. They live in herds of 10 to 1,000 and participate in a great migration of up to 1.5 million across 1,000 miles of Africa annually. Wildebeest, otherwise known as gnu, spelled G-N-U, and the name wildebeest comes from the Afrikaans words for wild beast. Afrikaans being the language spoken by the Dutch settlers of Africa. Also have one more glimpse at a couple more Maasai giraffe to our left. Maybe catch a glimpse of one of those purple tongues with them grazing on these palm trees.
He's like, give me some of that.
About to be out here to our right, we'll have an African elephant. Both male and female African elephants have tusks, so we can't use that to determine which we're seeing. However, the fact that we're only seeing one in addition to its somewhat large size, our sense that could be a male. Females and their offspring will typically live together in herds, while males are excluded and will go to live on their own, or extremely rarely in herds of other males called bachelor herds. I believe that is our oldest and heaviest male. He is 43 years old and just over 13,000 pounds. Wow. Hopefully we're going to see even more elephants somewhere up ahead. Work of the Disney Conservation Fund has found that African elephants are actually extremely afraid of bees due to having very sensitive skin. So if an African elephant detects bees in an area, we'll alert the other elephants in its herd, and after that point they'll effectively permanently avoid that area. African elephants will often decimate the crops of farmers, either by eating them or just straight up trampling them, which can obviously cause rifts between elephants and farmers. So researchers have determined that a good way of mitigating this is placing beehives along the fence lines of farmers. Elephants that often get stung to stay away, they'll just hear the sound of the bees and never come close. This is beneficial for the elephants as it prevents them from potentially being poached by angry farmers, and is mutually beneficial for the farmers as it provides an additional source of income in the form of the honey that the hives produce. And way out there to our left, we are going to have several more African elephants. Once again, the fact that we see several is a sign that those could be females living in a herd, potentially even with offspring. You may see them periodically flap their ears around, which they do as a means of thermoregulation. They do have hundreds of blood vessels in those ears, so by flapping them around, they can actually reduce their internal body temperature by as much as 15 degrees. We're also going to be passing by several more baobab trees. Those gigantic trunks contain vast quantities of water in excess of tens of thousands of gallons. Animals such as elephants and rhinos will use their tusks and horns to pierce into those trunks to gain access to that water during times of drought. For that reason, they're also known as trees of life, just like the icon of Disney's Animal Kingdom.
Doing some work, maybe.
also have a flock of greater flamingos, the lightest shade of pink of all flamingo species. When they hatch, they're a light gray color and then gain their complete pink coloration around 1.5 years of age from the vast quantity of brine shrimp they consume, which are high in carotene. A flock of flamingos is called a flamboyant. I'm about to be out there. To our left is a herd of white rhinoceros, the larger of the rhino species, usually weighing around 5,000 pounds. They're more social than the black rhinoceros, living in herds of males, females, and their offspring, so they're likely even more in the nearby vicinity. In front of them out there in the mud, to our left is a divot called a wallow. White rhinoceros enjoy rolling in these wallows to coat themselves with mud, primarily as a means of staying cool, but that mud also works as a form of sunscreen. We do have another rhino down this road to our right, as well as several ostrich that we'll hopefully see closer up here shortly. To our left, about halfway up this hill, beneath the shade of the trees, are several resting cheetahs. Cheetahs are the fastest land mammal. They top speed of between 60 and 70 miles per hour. They use their lengthy tails as a sort of rudder to quickly change direction while pursuing prey at those very high speeds. They're also one of the only cats that hunts during the day instead of at night. Now about to be coming up ahead, we'll have a Kopi rock formation, which are quite frequently home to prides of lions. So there is a possibility as we come around this curve, we could have some lions somewhere up here on these Kopis, but we'll just have to find out. Looks like we do have a sleeping lioness down towards this end, or a couple of them. Lions are inactive for up to 20 hours out of the day.
There he is.
That doesn't necessarily mean sleeping. It may just be lunging around while watching over their territory, although quite often it does mean sleeping, as you can see. All those lions are about 2 years old and have only been out on the savannah for a few months.
They're coming to the shade, isn't they?
To our right, we'll have one more look at that white rhinoceros, as well as that ostrich back there in the shadows, which, as you most likely know, are the world's largest birds. We can barely tell that those are females from their grayish feathers. Males have much darker, blacker feathers. They're also a little smaller than the males, stand around 6 feet tall. Males can stand in excess of 7. They're also one of the only flightless birds. To our left, we'll have several burrows carved into the sides of these hills, most likely carved by warthogs. The only warthog I'm seeing is behind that first tree on the highest part of that ridge. Very difficult to see. You have some of the best camouflage of any of the animals here on the reserve. So when laying down, they kind of just look like hairy rocks. When threatened, they'll bat themselves into their burrows, pointing their roughly 5-inch tusks out and defend themselves. I'm not seeing any more ostriches. However, ostrich are right by some of that tall grass is an ostrich nest. In addition to being the world's largest birds, also have the world's largest eggs. Those eggs can weigh as much as 3 pounds, which is roughly equivalent to 2 dozen chicken eggs. They're actually sturdy enough that they can support the weight of a human standing on them without breaking. Kobe Rock Formation, which are quite frequently home to We're coming up on the Warden's Outpost, where he's been raising some domesticated Nigerian dwarf goats. Nigerian dwarf goats are commonly raised for their milk, which is quite sweet and considered fairly valuable. You may notice that they have a bit of a potbelly-like appearance. This is due to goats being a type of ruminant, meaning that they have a chambered stomach. They do have a 4-chambered stomach, which obviously takes up quite a bit of space inside those big bellies.
They chew for no reason too.
Yeah.
As we begin to make our way off the reserve and back into the village of Harambe, I hope you've had a chance to see some amazing animals today. We definitely had some spectacular views of those Maasai giraffe, as well as those white rhinoceros, and a narrower glimpse of that pride of sleeping lions. If you're interested in seeing more animals during your time here at Disney's Animal Kingdom, I recommend stopping by Gorilla Falls Trail, which will be on the right as you exit Harambe Wildlife Reserve. Gorilla Falls Trail is home to gorillas, of course, as well as hippos that you can view from underwater. In addition to naked mole rats, meerkats, curvy zebra, Columbus monkeys, and a variety of African birds. Over in Asia, at Maharaja Jungle Trek, you can see water buffalo, flying foxes, Komodo dragons, and Sumatran tigers. Finally, if you take the Wildlife Express train over to Rafiki's Planet Watch, you can visit the Affection section. A petted zoo home to more of those Nigerian dwarf goats that we just saw.